My name's McKayla Smith. I met my ex-husband when I was about 7th or 8th grade back in early 90s. We were best friends. Eventually we became lovers per se and had 2 children during our marriage. I left him in 2006, and it took me 2 years to get my divorce. During that time, from the time my children were born until the time I got my divorce, I was the only provider for my children. Even while we were married, I was the sole caretaker. He was off in the military. My story starts in Hawaii as far as our marriage, because in Hawaii he had become very abusive towards myself and my son. At one point in time, he had grabbed my son so hard and left bruises up and down both sides of his rib cage. I had talked to the MPs and Hawaii CPS, all of which did nothing and swept it under the carpet because of him being in the military. I moved home in 2006 to escape everything going on. He had thrown remotes at me during my pregnancy. He had one time bitten me on my foot and tried to yank me out of the car while my son was in the back seat. It just didn't stop. The abuse continued. Between name calling and physically harming myself and our son, it just continued and nobody helped. I finally had to get on the phone with my mom, who paid over $1,000 for my son and I to come home within a 24-hour period of time after the last time he abused me. It took the MPs coming to our home and telling him he was not going to withhold my son and allowing me to leave before I was able to leave the island of Hawaii very safely to come home. From that point on, I literally had to wait to get my divorce for 2 years because of him being in the military. During that period of time, I had one attorney who sat on my case and only gave me temporary orders. I did not receive any child support for over 10 months for our youngest son. When I finally got my divorce, I thought my fight was over. I had won custody, my children were with me, and we were happy. That wasn't the case. My custody case continued. He continued to abuse me in the court system. The judges continued to stand by and help him. The guardian ad litem who was assigned to the case has been aware of the abuse going on with my children and has done nothing. She's never gone to the school. She's never talked to my son's therapist. She's never been to my home. She never talked to my parents. At one point in time, she never even talked to my kids until August 1st of last year, which would have been 2011. At that point in time, my son had found out, after a mandate had come down from the Court of Appeals, that he was coming home. Well, after court that day, my son found out that he was never coming home, and the judge was seeing to that. Jean Cotton was the guardian ad litem for my case. She decided to tell my son that it was okay, and after my son had gone to her office and explained to her that he was angry with me and hated me because he had found out what had happened, that he was not coming home, it only got worse. My case became a nightmare all over again, even after I won at the Court of Appeals. I suppose I should back up a little bit though, because in 2010 I had my daughter, and it was during the time that I became pregnant with my daughter that they actually took custody of my children from me and gave them to my ex, all because I gave my ex a medication bottle that was not an actual medication bottle, but filled with my son's prescription, along with directions, the proper dose, who the doctor was. And at that point in time, they said that wasn't good enough because I did not give the medication bottle that my son had actually had given to us from the doctor. The reasoning I didn't do that was because the last time I had sent my son with prescriptions, my ex-husband didn't return it. I called Miss Cotton at that time, asking her what I should do. She told me to call Dr. Hutton, who would prescribe a new medication and everything would be fine. Well, when I did that, Dr. Hutton had told me that he could not prescribe another medication for my son. So my son went without his medication, without everything he needed, because his father refused to return it. All because his father paid $25 for the medication, and I refused to reimburse him because my son had medical at the time. This case is out of control. It just doesn't stop at that point. It only gets worse. I had fought so hard on February 5th, 2010 to keep my children. I went in front of Judge David Edwards for minor modifications. Minor modifications, from what I understand, is not a change for residential schedule. It's not changing where the kids live. It is to change times. It is to change certain visitations if needed, things like that. Well, that didn't happen in my case. On February 5th, 2010, Judge David Edwards turned around and gave my ex-husband custody illegally. Back in 2008, a little bit earlier, I had filed an affidavit of prejudice against this judge. He refused to step down. Now, everything I've looked up, a judge has to step down. You have a right to file one affidavit of prejudice and have that heard, and that judge is supposed to remove himself. This judge did not. For 3 years, he sat on my case, during at which time, May of 2010, after my daughter, or excuse me, May of 2011, after my daughter was born, I was actually put in jail for seeking medical care. Medical care for my children. My son had an abscess, my youngest son had bronchitis, and my youngest son was due at Mary Bridge Children's Hospital in Tacoma for oral surgery to have 9 teeth, not 1, but 9, capped. Now, I went there because of my son's heart condition. I wanted to make sure he was okay. Going there was probably not only one of the best decisions, but worst decisions all at the same time. It was that decision that got me thrown in jail, that decision alone. I sat in jail for 6 days. 6 days without due process, without a trial, without anything, on contempt. Thank God for Stephen McNeil, who went to the Court of Appeals and actually had this overturned. Between him and Sean Tashner, they were my saving grace. For 6 days, I sat behind bars, knowing my daughter wasn't being breastfed because she was breastfeeding at the time. I sat in a jumpsuit full of breast milk that had spilled out, and nobody had gotten me anything until 24 hours after the fact of my jumpsuit being completely soaked. I never received medical care when I went into an anxiety attack. They refused. Matter of fact, I had one officer come in and tell me that I was 29 years old and to quit whining about it, that I was a fucking adult to grow up. This is what came out of his mouth. Not knowing my situation, not knowing why I was there, he accused me of being a criminal. It continued the whole entire 6 days I was there. 6 days being away from my daughter breastfeeding. 6 days of no phone calls, no contact to the outside world. I didn't even get regular food. Matter of fact, the food I got was rotten food. Sitting behind bars, I'd never done anything in my life to be put in jail. The only thing I ever had on my record prior was simple traffic tickets. That's it. Now, you go from simple traffic tickets to being shackled, and mind you, in front of my daughter who was there at court, and tell me how you're gonna feel. There's been no proof of me being crazy, but yet there's been allegations. I've gone to a psychologist in Hawaii where I have the records stating that my ex-husband had abused me, stating that I had anxiety, stating multiple things about him and I's relationship, but yet nobody in Grays Harbor County wants to hear it because it's too old. I have a BHR report that I did during my pregnancy with my daughter, stating that the only thing I have is anxiety. Still, nothing about me being crazy, and they still took my kids on the notion later that I'm crazy. I went and saw a psychologist, Dr. Whitehill, who did a psychological evaluation on me from A to Z, and we're talking IQ test, parental skills, whole 9 yards. Nowhere in that evaluation did he find me crazy. However, he did find that I was basically being abused by the system. He wrote under everything that I reported that all of my problems were due to the legal system. He wrote that I had severe anxiety and severe stress. Matter of fact, he wrote in his report that his report should not have any bearing on my child custody case for the simple fact that he had not been able to properly see both parties. But yet Grays Harbor County still to this day, will not listen to that. They used it against me, saying I had no empathy. Now you tell me what mother has no empathy. I've cried myself to sleep for my children. I cry when I see my children having bruises on their body. I can't sleep at night because of my children and what I know they're going through. And yet this judge and everybody else in this courthouse wants to say I have no empathy. How dare they? How dare they say I have no empathy? You go forward into my case, and I'm sitting in 2012 without my children. They have now threatened me with termination of my rights because they think I'm crazy. Not me, them. I have paperwork right here where the judge says if I don't go seek counseling, they're terminating my rights. 18 to 24 months worth of counseling. If I don't see it, then I lose my rights to my children. I'm not involved with CPS. I'm not a bad parent. I've never hurt my children. And yet they want to terminate me. You have right here the order, residential placement this July of 2011, within a 30-day period of a mandate coming down from the Court of Appeals. Now you tell me how Grays Harbor County has jurisdiction when according to the RCWs, there is no jurisdiction during that time frame for this courthouse. For them to make arrangements like this, they are not supposed to be able to do. This is them amending the parenting plan, literally taking away my rights to my children. Here's my bogus parenting plan. Now in this, I have no rights on any holidays to see my children. I don't get my children for any holidays. You tell me how that's in the best interest of my children who never spent any time with their father outside of with me. How is that in their best interest? My youngest son never even grew up with his father. He never spent any time living in the same household as his father up until they took them. How is that in my son's best interest? Here's my mandate. Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals divesting Judge Edwards of all his power, saying that everything he had done was no longer valid. This was my saving grace in August of 2011. My kids should have been returned. The only parenting plan left was the 2008 parenting plan granting me custody. That didn't happen. Instead, Judge Godfrey said this July, just this past July that happened, that this was moot and my children were not coming home. Police reports. 2, my children being abused. The police of Montesano are very well aware of this. They turned it over to the prosecuting attorneys here, and the prosecutors have done nothing because they said that there's not enough evidence. I've gone to CPS. CPS went to the extent of telling me, while in front of my attorney Sean Tashner, that I was making false accusations, handed me a piece of paper telling me that if I continued this, that I could enter into jail time. I had another witness there for this. This witness, they actually said they wanted their attorneys present the next time I bring this person with me because this person knows the games of CPS and knows what they've done. Not just to me, not just to her, but multiple people in Grays Harbor County. These are pictures. My son's abuse. This is the medical neglect my son faces. This is an abscessed tooth. This is MRSA. My son's had it 4 times since last September of 2011. 4 times. He's had impetigo, ringworm. He's had 3 abscess. My youngest son, 9 caps. My youngest son has 4 teeth out of the front side of his head. You tell me how this is okay. Bruising on my youngest son's backside. These are the bruises. These are the different marks. I don't know what these are, but they're there. This is to show you how high the bruising is on my youngest son's body. Right here you'll see a bruise. Miss Cotton's been made aware of this. Her excuse is my kids are going down the stairs on their butt. You tell me how them going on their butt leaves bruises like this. This doesn't happen from stairs. MRSA. More bruising on my son's lower body. This is my son's back. My son's eye. He has a black eye in this picture. Here's the black eye right here. I have no idea what these marks are, but they were on my son's side. These are shoes my son came to me in. This is my son's black eye again. More pictures of the marks on my son's body. This is what he thinks is adequate clothing to send my son home in. My son's underwear are showing. I have emails between the judges and the two attorneys talking about my case and stating that the decision was final. They were not going to have discussions on it. This is prior to going in on June 25th and actually signing the final parenting plan they just signed this 2012 that I'm currently getting ready to appeal and in the process of doing so. This is what I'm going through, and it's not even me. It's my kids. It's never been about me. That's the thing. It's always been about my kids for me. Now, if you ask everybody else within this case, they're going to tell you it's about me, my actions, what I've done. Well, let's take this all aside. Say it is me, okay? It is me for just a minute. You tell me how any caring mother can turn the cheek and see this. I don't think it's possible. These are certificates of classes I've taken. I have gone through 2 parenting classes. I've gone through 1 building healthy relations class. Due to the military, because of my ex-husband abusing me, they actually said we had to go to this class and asked me to go as a backup to help him out. This is from Thurston County. This is normally accepted in any courthouse. If you go and you do divorce classes, this is accepted in normal courts. Not here. This is through their own parenting classes, through CASA in Montesano. This was not accepted. This is through the military. Our own government, okay? Classes through our own government, not accepted in court. This is certificates showing that I've completed classes for CNA work. I've done in-home care. I know the marks of abuse. I was trained to look for the marks of abuse. This is my completion of it. Another certificate. I was trained, I tell you, by our own state to look for abuse. Now you tell me how this courtroom can sit here knowing this and tell me there's no abuse going on with my children. I'm wrong. I'm crazy. You tell me how that's possible. Because let me tell you, it's possible. It's happened. It's happened to me and it's happened to others. And it's time that Grays Harbor stands up and takes Grays Harbor back. There's more in here, so much more. I've got declarations from St. Mary's School, private school, talking about how I am as a parent and how, you know, my son has been there, and I filed for all the appropriate stuff for my son to continue his education there. My son was ripped out of that school because of his father. My son's been ripped out of everything he knows. His school, his violin lessons, Awanas. Now, for those of you who don't know what Awanas is, it's a youth group for children. It's a Christian youth group. My son was ripped out of that. Both of my sons were. They've been ripped away from everything they've ever known and given to a man who didn't even want them. This man accused my children of being black men babies. That's how this court operates. They operate just like that. I don't know what else to do. I've gone to everybody I can think of. I've gone to commissioners, senators, local government, police, CPS. I've gone through the proper channels of our courthouse. I've gone to higher court. I'm going back to higher court, all to try to get my children home. Nobody's listening. When is it going to be our children's time? When are people going to stand up and take a stand for our children? When is somebody going to bring my children home? When? When is this going to happen? It's not just family court. It's CPS. It's the justice system everywhere. For everything justice stands for, you look at the justice system, I'm sorry, but I haven't seen justice in a long time, and I don't have any faith in our justice system. I have none. My faith went out the window when you have judges who won't follow a higher court. Now, I don't know much about him being Judge Godfrey, calling himself God. I really don't care. I don't care if he's God or not. My concern is my children on this earth. And my life here on earth is hell. There is no heaven on this earth. When God said that there was going to be a heaven, there is, but it ain't earth. This is hell. I've been sentenced to hell. My kids have been sentenced to a life full of unjust. And if we don't stand up and take control now, we won't have it. We won't have control. My story continues to get worse, and it's not getting better. I left the county to flee this place just so I could have some justice and so my kids could. And it hasn't happened yet. I filed affidavit of prejudice against all 3 judges recently. It got denied. You tell me how 3 judges filing a lawsuit against our own county commissioners is not in cahoots on cases. You tell me how they're not going to back each other up. I don't see how they can possibly sit on a bench and not be biased when they have to have each other's back, considering they're filing a lawsuit against our commissioners. I don't see how that's possible. You tell me how I can sit here every day and not do something about this. It's not possible. I have to take a stand, and everybody else needs to take a stand too. I have filed recently, I even filed a removal for my guardian ad litem, which was denied. Judge Godfrey denied that removal. I don't know why he denied it, but he did. I don't feel the guardian ad litem's done her job. I don't feel like she's done anything in the best interest of my children, and I don't think she plans on it. That guardian ad litem has sat on the bench. She's an attorney. She's a guardian ad litem. How is she unbiased? She's also worked for CPS as their guardian ad litem, the same office I reported to, who told me if I continued making false accusations that there could be consequences. I don't see how any of this doesn't coincide as any of these people being biased, because in my eyes, they're all together. They're all against me, and they're all against my kids. There is no justice, none whatsoever. This most recently is paper I filed for the Court of Appeals. It's an order of indigencies. I have filed 2. The first one I filed, they sent back to me saying it wasn't in proper form. I filed a second one, and if you look right over here to the left, you'll see where it says to be determined by Judge Godfrey, the same judge I'm appealing. This, signed by Judge McKayla. Now, if that doesn't show them being biased, I don't know what does. I don't know what else to say.